All right, board members, it is 5:30. We'll start our meeting. Our first item is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any additions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. It is approved. Moving on to our presentation, oath of office for our student school board reps. It is an honor that you were appointed to guide the education of our community's children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a representative of our school district. The power puts you and the other members of our school board in a position of being responsible for equitable quality of education and for every student in the district. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together and with the superintendent and staff to lead the district towards fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. Having signed the acceptance of our office and oath of office, you will please publicly affirm your commitment by repeating the oath of office after me. Are you ready?
Stand up. Stand up.
I affirm that I will support
I affirm that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully the duties
and that I will discharge faithfully the duties
of the office of school board member
of the office of school board member
of Independent School District 413
of the Independent School District of 413
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ladies.
NIT.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations. Moving on to our presentation, data and goal setting presentation. Welcome, Mrs. Ritter.
Perfect, there we go. All right, so normally this time of year, the Director of Teaching and Learning, we get up and talk about our results that we had from the spring testing. But as of all of you are well aware, we ended the year in the distance learning model. So we did not have any spring testing. So we don't have any NWA reporting. We don't have MCA reporting, BAS reporting, any of those reports or scores because we were in the distance learning. However, the good news is our access assessment, which is the assessment we give to all of our multilingual learners. We were able to finish that the day before we went into distance learning. So we were able to get those results this fall. We had the preliminary results last spring and then got the final results this fall. So I wanted to share those results with you. But just to give you a little background, for those of you that aren't familiar, our multilingual learners are our students in our school district. Some of you may know them as our EL students. The Minnesota Department of Education and the WIDA Consortium, which Minnesota is part of WIDA, has gone away from calling them EL students and more of a multilingual learner, because many of our students speak English, might be their second language they're learning. It could be their third, fourth, fifth. So because of that, they're multilingual learners, or learning many different languages. So in order to qualify as a multilingual learner, when they come in to Marshall Public Schools, their family, when they've signed them up, fills out the Minnesota Language Survey. And there are 5, I believe, questions that they have to answer. If any one of them is a language other than English, then from there, it will alert our EL team at the different schools, whatever school the child is at. And from there, then a member of our EL team will conduct an oral interview with the family as well as with the student. The reason for the family interview is we want to learn, have they gone to school before? Is it their first time in the United States? Have they come from another district in Minnesota? Are they from another state? Just basically learn their history, their family history. And then for the student, just have a simple conversation with them to see what is their conversational English, and just kind of gives them an idea of where they might be at. Then from there, the EL teacher will administer the WIDA screener. The WIDA screener is it's similar to the Access Assessment, much shorter, but from there we will get a level, an entry level. And then based on all of those things, we place them in to an appropriate EL program within the school. So our EL programming looks different at each site, just depending on the sites. At Parkside and Westside, our EL team follows the district's balanced literacy plan, and from that we're ensuring the solid literacy foundational skills, because it's so important for our early learners to have those, which include the 4 domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And then depending on their level, if they're a newcomer student, they may be pulled out more and receive more intensive support than, for example, our advanced students maybe don't need as much support from the EL team. And then it's monitored and it can be adjusted as they see fit. The EL team works closely with the classroom teachers and has conversations with them, what's working, what's not working, that type of thing. At the middle and high school level, our EL team works closely with our core teachers, the content teachers, and we also have a few different co-taught classes going on, especially at the high school level. It's those credit-bearing classes where our multilingual learners might struggle a little bit more. We can put an EL teacher in with that core content teacher, and so then the students are able to access the information a little bit better, and the teachers can use different strategies so the students can earn those credit-bearing credits that they need in those classes. And again, it's responsive to the students' needs, and progress is monitored. So what is the Access? So it's a standardized assessment that all multilingual learners in the state of Minnesota take. It's assessed in 4 domains: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It's all done online, all of the 4 different domains. And then when we get the students' results, we get results from a level 1 until a level 6 for each of those reading, writing, speaking, and listening, as well as we get a composite score. And then based on those scores, the staff, we can use decisions to see what is the student's English academic language. That's what it's really assessing, is the academic language part of it, and then to facilitate their language development, and we can see growth over time on how the students have done when they have been here for multiple years. So the North Star, Progress Towards English Language Proficiency, or ELP, that's the accountability measure by MDE that MDE uses. And what they look at when they look at our EL students or our multilingual learners is they look at the percent of your multilingual or MLL learners meeting their target. So what they do is when they take that Access assessment for the first year, then they will determine, are they a newcomer, are they a beginner, intermediate, or advanced student, and from there, on average, it usually takes the student 5 to 7 years to meet exit criteria to exit out of the EL program. So depending on what their scores are the first year, they will then set a trajectory from anywhere from 5 to 7 years and how many points they should go up each year in their composite score to make it to exit criteria in either between 5 and 7 years. So that's a huge factor that MDE looks at, and Marshall Public Schools does very, very well over the state average of how many of our students are meeting their goal. You can see in 18-19, we had 45% of our students that met their goal where they should be, and then last year we had 49% of our students meet the goal.
How many EL students do we have, K-12?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. We have right around 400. Kind of depends on the day, but usually it's right around 400 students K-12. Yep.
Beth, is that they've met the criteria to exit, or they've met their annual?
They've met their annual trajectory or where they should be. Yep. And so especially when we see many students exit at 3rd and 4th grade level, and there's lots of different reasons for that, but a lot of it is that 5 to 7 year mark, especially if they started as a kindergartner. And so the good thing about looking at this is when we think of our older students, especially our middle or even high school students that come to us as a newcomer, which they maybe have never been in school before, they come as a freshman per se in high school, and then we think, oh, the high school team often says they're not going to exit. No, but are they meeting their trajectory goal? And that's really important. Are they making the progress they should? So it's always good data to look at there. Then the second one, those students, the number that met of multilingual learners that met exit criteria. And you can see I put on there too, in order to meet exit criteria, they have to have that composite score of 4.5 or higher. And then 3 of the 4 domains need to be at a 3.5 or higher. So that reading, writing, speaking, and listening. In 18-19, we had 33 students that met exit criteria. And last year we had 47 students. So 14 more from the previous year. So pretty exciting to see our numbers continuing to increase for our students that met their goal or their target, as well as the ones that met exit criteria. So some great work going on in our EL department, but it's a collaboration between the classroom teachers and the EL team. They're both doing great work together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy to talk a little bit about goal setting with World's Best Workforce.
Told Beth she could take the World's Best Workforce part, and she declined. So, just want to talk a little bit tonight too about the data we have is the one piece, and then goal setting tonight. We're approving skip plans and such too. So I want to talk a little bit about how the goal setting works and the pieces kind of behind where we set our goals from. The first piece, like Beth mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about World's Best Workforce. This has been in place, legislation since 2013. So every district is required to have a plan around those 5 different World's Best Workforce goals. And over the past few years, we've really tried to make a focus to align our skip plans with the World's Best Workforce and see action steps at building levels and at personal goal levels that help us address back to the World's Best Workforce. So I feel like every year we get a little closer and we're a little better aligned with those things. World's Best Workforce, I mentioned, has 5 different goal areas. I'm kind of just touch base on each of them. The first one is all students ready for kindergarten. So that's looking at measures our students prepared with the skills they need when they enter kindergarten. So that's a goal that early childhood is primarily the area that's going to work on that one. Parkside has some goals around that as well. Really, it's a measure of literacy skills. And at Parkside, we have NW at Parkside, we don't have it for early childhood, so they have something called the work sampling assessment they use, looking at those specific skills in early childhood area, sequencing and pacing guides with that. And it's a lot of formative assessments at that level too. Are they prepared for kindergarten? The next goal in these, you'll see a progression in these. The next one is all students read well by 3rd grade. We talk a lot about the read well by 3rd grade goal. So the goal that we'll write for our World's Best Workforce is tied specifically to West Side and the 3rd graders' percentage at grade level. But we measure students through Parkside as well as really the measures we look at for that. It's looking at obviously reading levels and are they making growth, like Beth mentioned earlier, but also meeting that kind of grade level benchmark. A lot of the action steps around this one are looking at data-based interventions and our MTSS process. So that individualized instruction and you hear us talk about balanced literacy, and all those interventions are targeted towards this read well by 3rd grade. Certainly students that haven't met that target by 3rd grade, we continue to provide interventions and try and catch them up. But the measure for this one is specifically tied to 3rd grade. Goal number 3 is one that affects all buildings. It's close the achievement gap. And it's kind of open-ended what that achievement gap is. As we've talked about it the last few years, it's changed a little bit. This last year, we discussed it at admin level. We're looking specifically at free and reduced price versus non-free and reduced price. That's a population we've seen grow significantly in our district over the past few years. So some measures there. The action steps for that are going to tie back to some of the things even under the reading goal, because that's our primary area, and this one is reading. Looking at that individualized instruction again and providing targeted interventions to help students grow. A lot of research-based interventions, and then there's multiple data points for this one. This is when we pull NWAs. We have those BAS scores for reading assessments. We have Ames Web at some levels. We have the MCA scores that we're always looking at all those different pieces and how do they fit together and where are we making growth and what different pieces do we add into play. As we're writing World's Best Workforce goals, Beth and I, now that SCIPs will be approved this evening over the next week, we'll be taking those specific action steps and tying those right back to our World's Best Workforce. That plan isn't due to the state for a couple months, but we really want to make a targeted effort to make sure that it all fits together and the timing lines up better with when we look at it and how we go back and measure it. So that's one that hits everybody, all the buildings. Goal 4 is all students college and career ready by graduation. So that's one that we talk about strategic plan goals for this year. That's an area we're focusing on. It's an area the state has certainly deemed as very important. So this one we look at middle school and high school. Middle school has some specific things they do with college and career planning surveys and that kind of thing. And then when students take some of those surveys in the middle school level, they're even used at the high school level when they come back and take a careers class, for example. So that's the career interest surveys and stuff that all fits in with that. The Ramp Up to Readiness program at the high school is part of our goal with that, making sure students are aware of what some options are after high school, and the CTE discussions that we've had and some of those opportunities for students under the school. The other piece that we measure for this one is looking at concurrent enrollment, dual credit, advanced placement, PSEO, all those other credit-bearing opportunity courses that we have for our students. And that's helping prepare for after high school. The last one, we started with ready for kindergarten. The last goal area is all students graduate on time. So we look at two different measures, the four-year rate and the 7-year rate. Our 4-year rate, we look specifically at the high school. The 7-year rate pulls in the Maytech students and, like Beth mentioned earlier, some of our multilingual students who might start school later, recognizing there's an additional need of some years to finish. The 7-year rate is our second measure for that one. So how does that fit together? And we pull data from all of our students for that one, not just the high school. Ties into strategic plan. There are the 10 goal areas that we've been working on. That's our 5-year goal plan for the district. Every year we identify 2 of those goal areas that we focus on. And then we've been pulling things from World's Best Workforce that tie back to it. And with that one, again, that's another area where we've really been trying to be intentional about taking goals from the SCIP and the site improvement goals and how do they fit with this. I think when we started some of this, we knew we had to have World's Best Workforce goals. We knew we had to have all these different pieces. So teachers have a personal goal, and there'd be a building goal, and then there'd be a strategic goal, and there'd be the World's Best Workforce goal, and then who's keeping track of all the pieces. So the more that we see those aligned, the easier it is for teachers to know what are we working on and what is the focus area, and for buildings to be more aware of kind of the progress we're making there. So we've had some really good discussions around those over the past couple of years. The SCIPs, the site improvement plans, these are what we'll be looking at later this evening. They're site-specific goals that tie back to those different goal areas, all connected back to the strategic plan. Math and reading are the primary focus in the SCIPs. You'll see goals that buildings wrote, also looking at social emotional, for example, was a big one this year. A lot of buildings talking about those too, but math and reading are kind of our core primary areas there. And the leadership teams at each site really write the action steps and those very specific goals to that. So the teachers have a lot of say in what that looks like for each site. Personal goals is in kind of the last step. Our teachers all have personal goals that they write. Admin also has some personal goals they write. But for the teachers, it connects back to the SCIP. So they pick SCIP goals. They have 2 personal goals each year. One is off the professional growth and development plan. So they write a goal around an area that they know they want to professionally grow in. Maybe they want to study a new behavior management plan or something, some certain strategy, reading strategy or something they want to do. They write a goal around that. The other one's required piece from the state legislature is that there's a student learning goal with a specific measure in it. And that's one of the areas that we'll talk about later this afternoon as well, this evening as well, with the MOU, just recognizing that last year we had limited data to collect in the spring. We know that students are coming from different spots this fall. So looking at that MOU for this year, with these personal goals, allowing teachers some flexibility with how they're measuring the outcomes, still working on these same areas, but some flexibility to do reflective statements and say, this is the work I did this year, this is the outcomes I've seen, this is how I feel my students have done based off of that. So I feel that'd be a nice piece this year, but it still ties back to all the other goals, and they'll still be connected. So kind of our next steps with goal setting, skips will be approved this evening at the board meeting. World's Best Workforce Plan, Beth and I will be working on that in the next couple of weeks to get that updated for the year. That reflects the action steps right from the skips. It's not due to MDE, like I said earlier, until December 15th. We want to get that together now because that's when we're doing the goal setting work. And teacher and personal goals are due on November 6th. Questions from the board members? Exciting topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our consent agenda, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's open for discussion.
Yeah, Beth.
Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. It is approved. Moving on to our financials, motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's open for discussion.
Just wanted to point out that we'll go through each one, but there's several things that we should have for these masks, some of our thermometers, the dividers, so quite a few dollars that they're actually coming to the franchise. We also had a couple of our technology lease payments that are due in October each year. That is, we've got one payment to school for
Very good. Board members, any questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Motion passes. Anything else to bring up on financials, Dion?
really good year. Our general fund, our general fund, full-time revenue, little less spending than
Thank you. Board forum, board members, anybody like to bring up?
I just, if you saw MSBA, the webinar, I watched the webinar and Dion did as well. And Tom Melcher gave an excellent presentation on the study group on school finance. Tom is just exceptional. Been with the State Department for 40 years. He's retiring this year, but still used as a consultant. The MSBA sent out today that it is recorded, so you may want to look at his presentation as a recording. This is exceptional stuff that's brought into the legislature. He is well respected in the legislature, and as each of us sitting here knows, we have a $4.7 billion deficit in the state that's going to hit us hard. And so I think with the strategy that he has here presenting to the legislature, at least it's putting in front of them, and this is how we need to do business with our schools. So it would be worth your while to take a look at this and look at the report that MSBA sent out today by Tom Melcher. So he's just a class act.
Thank you.
Bond Oversight Committee met last week and just continued to kind of push things along. We did reaffirm some of the decisions we had made earlier on brick and tile and those types of things. So it's moving along. Dion will probably give us a more specific update on some things. So.
Anybody else? Dion, you want to jump in on that? Anything? Okay.
Chris is going to share Ken in our IT department, put together a time-lapse video. Pretty cool. It was 4 minutes to start and cut it back to mock-up on upper deck. So we got approved. We started on that. We're working on the exterior wall frames. We're starting to pour some of the top slabs on the second floor. And then some of the work on the first floor. Couple of weeks, they're going to be working on HVAC and electrical, maybe they'll cover plumbing. And just to kind of note is there's a lot of other things going on. Peter and Amanda met with some of their core group, got a core group together with some of the second, third, employees, and they, along with Jeremy, innovative solutions to start the ball rolling on furniture discussion. We have another meeting in a couple of weeks over some of the color palettes that have already been decided in the buildings. Peter and Amanda speak on that. And then Todd, Warren, Nick, and I are meeting next week just to go over some of the plans, revisit the plans, different things like the security entrance, make sure that everything's in place on the specs. When we get to that, it's there, the cameras, so a lot of things moving on that. It's looking, they're doing a great job of. There's another meeting on Wednesday, which we'll get an update on the progress schedule. Let you guys know how that's. Parkside, I think you've seen it kind of getting down a little bit. What they're doing, the office area and the sensory room, which first part that we had requested to be done. Basically, it's done. We've got probably about 70 to 80% of the punch list done. We've got a lot done on the It's great. In the area B or the new addition, we've got the sheetrock pump and paint. We started painting last week. I wasn't out there today, but I was working at 3 or 4 fingers working on those areas today. So that's going well. We started laying carpet and the ceiling here. Got multiple things working there. The tile work in the new bathroom in the early childhood is done. It's great. Over any weekend, they installed the new clock system, station system. We got the new clock order for that. So once they get here, we'll start to plug those into the system. All is running. Other than that, heard you guys ask about brick. We got the brick mock-up was approved and the mortar was approved. They actually started on that last Friday. We're working on it today. I know what's over there today would sound like we got the tent up, keep the warmth going. The roof is, at least yesterday was probably about 70% done. I'm not sure how far you got today. They did some sidewalk replacement over the weekend and some, they did some parking lot replacement. Parking lot replacement is actually not part of our construction. That's something that's used in place because of the damage done during construction. So depending on the weather, it looks like in a week or so we've got to warm up. They're going to work on some landscaping and some of that kind of bricks done. They'll start installing windows. Install the windows bricks past that area. So we're still shooting for a couple of weeks, but take it week by week. Wednesday we have another meeting. Dick, Keith, and SNR, and I have a punch list before the meeting just to make sure everything's up to speed. Maytech is basically finished. We've got one security window. We had the security zone installed. Programming is all done. We just have some testing on the lockdown. Probably do that this week sometime. The high school, we did a test on the office part of the lockdown, which worked well. We did not test the strobes or the other areas of the building. We'll do that. And then where the building is empty, we still have some programming to take care of. We can see that over the meeting. We're working on the punch list item. A whole lot there. And then system, there'll be new costume cards for the high school. So, we're all very happy with the production over the weekend. You know, getting a lot of the punch list done. We're looking at hopefully just getting the office area, Maytech high school done. New addition to get that.
Very good questions. Thank you. Administrator's report.
Okay, a few things to share this evening. In my report, one of the first things I outline in there is the MOU agreement that we'll ask you to approve later this evening, allowing for personal goals of teachers to be measured using personal reflective statements. And the other piece that we've talked to the EA and just would like to offer for our teachers is realigning some PLC work this year. Not an MOU for this piece, but wanting to allow some additional work time as part of the PLC time and some different structures around that for this year to recognize some additional work that teachers have going on with distance learning. An admin work session I mentioned in my report as well. We recently took time to look at some of the similar of the goal piece I just outlined with you, with the World Best Workforce Strategic Plan and SCIPs. We took some time at an admin meeting and walked through all that, and we had a good discussion about all those goal pieces there. Early childhood, Tiffany talked in hers about, she's overseeing the child care program for us this fall at the YMCA. Since we currently have 72 students qualifying for child care program, and we have about 40 students that are employees' children that are utilizing that and prepared to utilize that should we go into distance learning model fully there. She also talked in hers about 19 at-home learners that are voluntary pre-K or in the threes preschool. Birth to 3 is doing home visits, but they're receiving it virtually, so it looks a little different this year. In case early childhood would have to go distance learning model, she has devices and such ready to pass out there too. Parkside, Darcy talks about her skip goals and recognizes, and this is really similar for most of the skips this year, we didn't get to finish everything last year that we had planned, kind of ended the year abruptly with that last year, so most of the skips this year plan on finishing some work from last year. Darcy talks a significant part of hers is looking at closely monitoring student progress and adjusting instruction as needed. So we'll be doing some data meetings 3 times a year to look at really a deep dig into the data for individual student needs there. She also talks about in their distance learning model last spring, the lack of the synchronous instructional time. We didn't have teams and such available at Parkside at the beginning of that last year. So doing some work to prepare in case we end up going that way at some point this year, just incorporating some more of that synchronous time in. We do have teams available for all of our teachers at all levels now for this year. So some additional things that they've added there. West Side, Peter talked about the number of staff and students that were needing to quarantine. We moved in the distance learning model from the hybrid model on October 1st, not the 1st, a week ago. So students meeting with homeroom teachers a couple times a day for some instruction there and then touching base with students throughout the day. The hope is still with West Side to move back into a hybrid model on the 26th for next week. They would have completed that 2 weeks by that point. He also talks in his report this time about their PBIS program. So West Side's been doing PBIS for a while now, but they've never formally done the training for PBIS, so they couldn't be recognized as a PBIS school. They have enrolled in that training now this year. They have about 7 staff members signed up that are participating in that, and they're doing a number of different things with the students, training them in expectations and working through the PBIS process there. Middle school, Mary Kay talks in hers about math team has started there. A large group of students this year. They actually have more students sign up for math team this year than they've ever had before. So it's kind of exciting to see students participating in different activities. Their first math team meet is on Friday this week. She also talks about the effects of mental health as well as mental health impacts and physical health and vice versa. Middle school is implementing body breaks during the school day this year. Some things that they're doing over the intercom. Exciting things going on there. They're are excited to be implementing those pieces. Also, they're implementing that new social emotional curriculum that they presented last month at the board meeting. High school had a few announcements that were exciting this time as well. I'm going to read some of what Brian wrote in there. He starts off with congratulations to Wayne Ivers and to Rick Purrington. On Saturday, October 10th, Wayne Ivers was inducted into the Youth and Music Hall of Fame. It's a great accomplishment for Wayne, his family, our school, students, and community. So congratulations to Wayne on that outstanding award. It's put on by the organization that runs the state marching band competition and members are selected by current Hall of Fame members for that. So it's a big accomplishment for Wayne. Rick Purrington was recognized recently by the College Board for his work as an exam reader during the summer of 2020. Rick was one of 613 high school and college faculty who scored over 94,000 AP US history exams, or AP Euro history exams. So he was certainly busy this summer with that. This experience will certainly benefit Rick's teaching as well as our students understanding the material. So thank you to Rick for his efforts with that. It's a big summer accomplishment for him. And Brian recognized a student as well. MHS was recently notified that senior Zoe Vorbach was named as commended students in the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Program. Commended students are being recognized as exceptional academic promise they have demonstrated by their outstanding performance in the PSAT. So some big things taking place there. I want to make sure we called out. Maytech and Amanda's report, she talks about student councils getting going at that site. Currently have 6 students signed up to be part of student council this year, so they're getting going with that. She also talks about her SCIP and her site leadership team. They've been working on putting their site improvement plan together, hybrid and distance learning plans, and working to connect with staff on a few items that Maytech is starting to look at changing and making some improvements, looking at learning more about social and emotional learning and being trauma informed as part of their changes at Maytech. She also mentions targeted services. Emily Carroll has signed up as that coordinator again for this year, and she's been working to get that set up and ready to start for the year. Activities. Bruce talks about fall activities participation. The numbers have been strong across the board. Participation numbers in each program are very comparable to previous years, so considering the fall we had, that's nice to see a number of students in those things as well. He also talks about winter sports and fine art activities, beginning to register for those things for the winter season. No doubt going to see further participation by many students there as well this year. Certainly looking forward to striving to touch as many lives as possible with life skills and through participation in those extracurricular activities. He also highlights some winter plans from the State High School League I wanted to share with you. It says the High School League continues to modify and update winter sports protocols and parameters. At one of their recent board meetings, the league approved competitive seasons for dance, basketball, hockey, wrestling, and gymnastics. Similar to the fall, there will be a 30% reduction in all their competitions. It's the same reduction that took place for the fall activities. Some of the dates are being adjusted as well, pushing them back in order to create less overlap with the late finishing volleyball and football seasons with those changes there. And he just says thank you to the coaching staff, players, and parents for their patience and understanding as they work through all those changes. There's a lot of changes taking place there. Special ed, Jackie mentioned, in the past years we've offered 4 special ed paperwork days. So for special ed teachers, they're going to take one day each quarter to do additional paperwork. This year with COVID, and they, for a number of reasons, but primarily for COVID and a small pool of substitute teachers available, also considering it could very well happen that we would plan a paperwork day and then they wouldn't be able to take it because we'd end up needing to pull that sub for something else. We've said this year we'll not be doing those 4 days. Instead, we'll be allowing a certain number of hours for each of those teachers to do that same paperwork outside of the workday, and we'll be paying them for some of those hours, just instead of taking a full day out of the classroom. Also, she just mentioned this is Jackie again, number of opportunity to do some staff evaluations early this fall, and she just said excited about what she's seen taking place virtually. She says the circumstances certainly aren't ideal, but staff have really stepped up and found ways to keep all learners engaged, whether at school or at home. And she calls out appreciation for all the staff doing that and all the work they're doing with that as well. In Beth's report, she talks about the feedback from staff for Back to School Workshop Week. Over 100% of staff felt the workshop schedule was effective. We did things differently this year. A lot of it was virtual. Feedback was the topics were relevant, timely, and valuable, and the trainings were presented in a format easy to understand. So we'll be doing, it was good to see some positive feedback there. We'll certainly be doing additional virtual workshops this year, it looks like. And then she mentions the CTE courses, some planning that we're doing there. A group of us will be meeting with some area schools and looking at some of their programs and what they're doing and talking about how that could help us as we improve some of our programs. I think, Dion, that brings me to you.
A couple of things that were in the report I just wanted to point out. One was donations that you guys approved. United Way donated $1,800 towards some of our PPE, which down for that. And then also, when this is something we'll talk about it in a little later date, but Jason Anderson of the city, got Vanderbilt and manufacturers with city services. We're working together on an NDOT grant, the same grant that we got approved 3 years ago with the sign stuff. With those grants, as you guys know, we applied for it. We'll apply for it in January. If we get it, we won't get the funds for 5 years. We'll see if I can help 2022. What we're going to do is we're applying for the grant to finally get that trail, pedestrian bike trail from C Street over to Southfield. Got this wonderful sidewalk coming in, and it's all usually kind of great school going up. It's be appropriate to have trail go through, and then also go to the school. And then there's a section which I was looking at, right, it would go from Southfield on the other side, down to the South Lake on Main Street. And so part of that will need board approval. The whole project, these are just estimates. It's pretty early. A little over $350,000. The school portion of it is the grant, 80%. There's about 8% of it. We would cover the other 12%. The whole trail and everything. So, do a great addition for the city, and it'll do a great addition for the school. Just wanted to get a heads up on that. We'll discuss more as it comes along, and we'll share what that is. Just a few things in my report. First thing was we awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting again this year. This confirms once again the hard work, quality, dedication of the whole district office. There's so many players that make that possible. They wanted just a special thank you to Jill and Ross for their work together, and it's quite a task. Audit is starting to wrap up. Finance committee will be 26, and then there's some change to the presentation audit will be on the second. Another thing that we'll make sure to start bringing updates more often in order to quality projects. Just beginning, we've been working on that with my tips on that. We're hoping to get you guys to be involved with the approval of us putting the bids out there and the approval of the bids. We're hoping to have the bids out there and approved by the end of the year. It's aggressive, but we want to make sure that we get good bids and get somebody committed to the project early. So we'll try to give you guys updates after the bids are approved and the project starts. Food service negative balance. Obviously, with free food service, and accumulating the negative balance, but we're still working on getting the negative balance lowered. Probably still has been out there in the past with everything that's going on. We're still putting that out there, and you can see how that's definitely got lowered. Some of you may know, USDA knows that the summer food service program breakfast and lunch has been extended through June 30th. That's good news to families who are paying for breakfast and lunch. So we'll hopefully see that negative balance getting lower by the end of the school year. Last meeting we had, there were some concerns about lunch, and I'm shared with you guys some of those changes. Parkside and Westside, we kind of left them alone. They're still paying lunches because they're not all eating out of the cafeteria. They want to go back to the room. So we did run a report, kind of compare last year with what food being served and quantity, and it's very comparable. So we haven't done much change with the Parkside or Westside. High school and middle school, we heard some of the concerns. We switched over to trays instead of the bag lunch. Hopefully there's some normalcy to the students. We increased the food servings from a half cup to a cup. We added a third choice entree. So there's 3 entrees to choose from. We did add the snacks, 2 to 3 days out of the week. Add a little more substance to the lunches. And then we added the second entree per person. I just went on October 5th. And then that started today at the mills. Haven't had a lot of the second entree purchase. Been very minimal, but it's there. Available for them. I think it's going home hungry. It shouldn't be because it's available. Second entree is for purchase. And then meal distribution, just wanted to point out for just the meal distribution at the middle school, while West Side was in distance learning, we added a meal distribution at that site also.
Dion, did we come to a conclusion on the Minnesota State High School League surcharges? Did we hear back from them? No? Any questions? Thank you. Now we'll move on to the exciting report from our school board reps.
A lot of things are getting canceled and not starting up. So high school, all volleyball games are postponed and canceled. And Honor Society blood drive is on Thursday, 22nd. There is no more dance for homecoming. It's just coordination, and a game, but you have to get tickets from the players.
There's also dress up. On Wednesday, not Wednesday, sorry, West Side. They're still in full distance learning this week. And then there's a picture retake day on the 30th, and all schools had MEA break last week starting.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to discussion items, discussion of the facility usage with the COVID-19.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this one up. Currently, little background, currently we're not renting out our facilities to outside agencies. Community Services has been meeting in our facilities for programs, most of them being outdoors. We are receiving requests from associations, organizations wanting to use facilities to work with our students, especially in winter as things are getting colder and needing to find more room inside for things. So before we make decisions and move forward with some of that, I wanted to have a conversation with the board about your thoughts and so getting some input on that. Question is, do we want to consider opening our facilities to some of these organizations, certainly under certain stipulations? We have the return to play guidelines in place. They need to be updated for winter with some of the updates that we've seen with spectators for volleyball, for example. What will we allow? Do we want to have like inter school things, only doing some intramural type events? We certainly can follow guidelines with saying just Marshall students, the masks, the social distancing, participant ratios, all those would have to be part of the conversation. But wanted some input from you guys as these requests are coming in, and we need to start putting some decisions together and setting out what those stipulations would be if we're going to allow some of those things to take place.
I don't know, my opinion, I think we should start to look at opening it up. There are other facilities in town that aren't school district facilities that are doing it. We got to give a safe opportunity for some of these kids to continue with their activities, and I think it's been proven throughout the course of the summer that these things can happen. So I would be in favor of us trying to find ways to work with those organizations to open them back up for our kids.
I would too. Our buildings belong to our community, and the more we can have them accessible, they just passed a bond issue. They've supported our new buildings coming up and whatever we can do there. The one concern I have is the extra cleaning that might be incurred because of what we're doing to clean, and who's going to bear that cost. We need to talk about that budgetarily, what that cost will be. But I think we need to open up with COVID precautions in mind.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody know, do we have any liability issues, any insurance issues or anything like that from renting out the community or renting out the facility?
Good question.
I don't know of anything that'd be different with COVID. I mean, we can be going back to some of the rental things that we've done in the past is what we'd be doing, but
I think we got to be really careful because we don't want to put our students in jeopardy either. I mean, who's going to monitor and and watch the groups. What do you do when a group isn't following the procedures? What do you do with the first outbreak? I mean, do we really want to gamble having a major outbreak? So I got reservations. I think if we do open them up, it has to be really strict guidelines.
Just to bring an aside to what you're saying, Jeff, many of our students do sports camps in the summer in the cities and in Sioux Falls and so forth. Many of our students do that. These would be the same kinds of students who would be participating. If we're keeping Marshall students particular for activities, these would be the same kinds of kids that we'd be looking at. I guess whoever would be coaching, we'd need to have some stipulations on what our expectations would be with reference to the kids for those safety issues.
I share the same concern Jeff does when this comes up. The summer's a different animal, the fall's a different animal because those are primarily done outdoors, and looking at the CDC recommendations compared to outdoor versus indoor. This is all stuff that's going to be indoors. Monitoring compliance, monitoring and keeping track of how many numbers are with which program. If it's going to be girls basketball, MGBA, and hoops, which ones are in the gym at the same time. I mean, those are nights where there's a lot of kids in those buildings. And I think trying to make sure we as a district have not only the guidelines in place, but monitoring who gets to use it when is going to be a nightmare. Who doesn't follow the rules, as Jeff said, I think there has to be some sort of staff, I think, from the district. I was just out in another state, and there was so much security walking around telling people, you must follow the rules, you must follow the rules. And because we know that there's going to be those that are not likely to do it or take it lightly. Right. And I think, as Jeff said, we do have a responsibility, particularly with the numbers increasing the way that they are. Michael Osterholm from the University of Minnesota was quoted as saying the next 4 to 6 weeks will probably be the worst numbers we'll see in this pandemic. And if all these kids are going to be moved indoors, I see that being really problematic. Liability I'm not concerned about, except from the standpoint of, if we aren't monitoring this and we're not on top of those groups and we're not on top of those numbers, I think that we have a reputation issue, as well as not necessarily the financial liability, but we have that responsibility. And I just see our staff already overwhelmed, and we put so much on them, and we're putting so many expectations on teachers to now say, oh, now we have these other layers, and it's not just one group, it's a lot of groups. I mean, when I think about the winter activities that my kids were involved in and how many students there were, and then limiting it to Marshall students, but are we going to get pushback on that for tournaments and, people coming from surrounding towns? I just see it being a lot of layers of conflict. I would support it in theory that we should look for those opportunities to have things available, but I think we have to tread pretty carefully with that planning and the responsibility we have for safety at the top of the consideration.
I'm going to echo, I believe it was Bill's point or somebody's point a minute ago, and just kind of, our kids are out doing these activities right now. I mean, I can name kids in the volleyball team that have been traveling to South Dakota to participate in fall leagues. I can name kids that have been going to other places to play baseball this fall just to have an opportunity to compete. My personal feeling is that we need to have something for our kids to do that are activities, because these kids are not sitting at home staying away from each other. They're still gathering, they're still doing things, they're just doing it outside of school. And they are doing it over other states and in other communities and in other places. They're just as likely to pick up something there and bring it back here as they are to have some type of exchange here. So I, in theory, would support reopening our facilities and renting them out and having our kids participate in activities. I do think on the other side that we need to be very careful how we do that. And I don't know that we necessarily have the groundwork laid in place to do that right now, but I do think it's a conversation we need to start having.
No, we don't have the groundwork in place. Well, we have some pieces in place, not enough, I don't think, to just say
You
we're
know what?
opening right now.
We know what other districts are doing, like our size.
There's a lot of this discussion taking place right now. I don't know that a lot of decisions have been made yet, but these are the conversations that are happening.
I think we got to be careful too, because everybody wants things to go back to normal. We're not normal yet. So do
Exactly.
we open our facilities up normally when we don't open up our classrooms normally? I mean, it's almost like a double standard. I know sports is important to a lot of people, but so is education. So you have a major outbreak, and we got to teach everybody virtually. How many people lose out on that? Because we wanted to play a volleyball game. So I think we got to be really careful. We're not in normal times,
Right.
so things cannot be normal.
And I think, Jeff, just to kind of echo what you're saying, I don't think where anybody's asking us to open up normally. I think, this summer, let's just take basketball, for example. Kids worked together in pods, so they knew who they were in contact with. There weren't kids from outside the community coming in. I think you give these organizations an opportunity to, we set those parameters and we try and do this safely, and we have to manage it. I mean, we had a case this summer where we had a positive and they had to shut it down, and we managed it. So we have to work with those organizations. I think everybody understands that it's not going to be normal. I don't think anybody's asking for us to just open it wide up again, but let's try and find a way to give us some opportunities to get these kids, because as Aaron said, if we don't, they're going to go somewhere else, and then we've got no control over it.
Right. No, I think you're right, Bill. I think the expectation, the request is they want something. And as we've talked about it, there are things we're doing in the classrooms and in our buildings, and I don't know what that looks like for sure yet. I do agree there'd have to be a lot of stipulations around it, because right now, as our county numbers have climbed, our in-building case numbers have remained pretty steady. We haven't seen a lot of change. West Side, we saw some change a couple weeks ago, or a week ago. We made some changes there, but overall, our internal numbers have been pretty good. We've been able to stay in this hybrid model and manage that pretty well, and I would hate to lose that over something else. So we'd have to put some pretty strict things around what that would look like, and what we'd allow and what we wouldn't. And what I could do, because I'm hearing kind of some mixed things, but overall some level of support for it, I could get a group together and start laying out what some of those stipulations would be and bring that back to you guys at our next meeting.
And bringing up what Sarah brought earlier, I think sometimes we're kind of ignoring the science and what people are saying. Dr. Osterholm is very reputable, and he's saying we're going to spike in the next 6 weeks in Minnesota. So we have to be careful of that when we do our planning coming up front. And we do have to hold whomever is using the adults involved with that accountable for following whatever it is we need to put in place for safety for our kids.
Absolutely.
What are you kids hearing at the high school about, other activities other than regular sports using our facilities? Is anybody talking about that?
A lot of kids are hoping for it. Like, a bunch of seniors are like crying about some of their seasons are not going to be happening because they're indoors and such a COVID-19, and none of their family members or like their friends can see them play. But also a lot of kids are knowing that other kids are not going to stay 6 feet, wear their masks. So there's a lot of worry and like a lot of hoping.
I feel like students are like bummed out at the fact that they can't play the game, but they understand the consequences of playing. And like I like to point out what they said. You can't control what the students do outside, but I feel like if you do allow them to play the game, they're still probably going to go outside, do the same things they did, to hang out with friends.
Socially, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're just going to add to the.
But what I hear you both saying is they desire to participate in more activities.
Yeah.
I liked what Sarah said with like what activities can we decide are important, like what activities can we give the indoor gym to, because only a certain amount of games can play at the same time, and we can't split the gyms like we used to. So like a lot of kids are worrying about like if their activity is important enough for the school to fund it.
Thank you.
We want the games. we know we might get sick.
Yeah.
We know it's possible.
Yeah.
Very good. I think you got some feedback.
I do. Thank you, guys.
Discussion items, first review of policies 701 to 705. Any comments or questions?
They're all financial, so we're giving those.
Any other comments? Moving on to our action items, approval of the site continuous improvement plans. Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just wanted to share with these, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of the plans this year are looking at continuing and finishing some work that was started last year. So really that focus in meeting individual needs of students, closing some achievement gaps, and completing some things from last year.
With the distance learning, do you think they can reach those goals? I see each one's looking for a little bit better.
We had a lot of discussion on it this year, so the goals were set a different way this year with some of the percentages. Instead of taking a growth from last year, we didn't have a percentage from last spring, so we took a 3-year average of the grade level, and we did not add to that percentage. Actually, the goal is maintaining a 3-year average.
Very good. Any other comments? I'll call for a vote.
Sorry.
Okay. And it passes. Approval of the COVID lease provisions memorandum of understanding. Do I-
Motion to approve.
Discussion?
These were an MOU that we've discussed with each of the different bargaining groups, providing some additional flexibility around leaves for COVID-related reasons.
Praise to our teachers and support staff. Call for a vote. It is approved. Approval of memorandum of understanding addressing alternative teaching performance pay. Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
It's open for discussion.
And this is where I talked about working with the teachers and had some conversation with the EA around what this would look like. But instead of personal goals being specific to a measure, doing some reflective statements, recognizing the value in that, with measuring growth as well.
Very good. It is approved. Approval to set a special meeting date to canvass election results. Motion to approve.
Second.
October 19th at 5:30. Sarah said motion. Do I have a second?
About November 12th at 4:30.
Well, okay, how?
We'll try that one.
Whatever it is.
October 12th at 4:30.
Absolutely. Go down November 12th at 4:30. Yeah, today's too soon.
Today would be too soon.
Only it was
To
today.
rock and roll.
All right, motion, and it's been seconded, so we'll vote.
And that was when we were given one of 2 dates that we had to select between only 2 dates this year to do this. So.
Leeway, do they?
No, there wasn't much leeway this year.
And it is approved.
Do that anytime we want it.
Board members, thank you for your time. Meeting's over.